Ashe Top is the kind of pick you would see as a new player, using Ghost to get back to lane faster, and dying 15 times to a Darius. But I have actually found a Challenger player named Himself11 who seriously plays Ashe top lane, and he even actually uses Ghost to get back to lane faster. This is not a joke, it's actually part of his strategy. I'll tell you why he does it later, but this pick is the absolute opposite of what you expect to see in top lane. It's squishy, it's ranged, its damage isn't very high, and it has absolutely no mobility. So how can he even survive? Well, it's true, he has no mobility, but he does have a way to limit the enemy's mobility thanks to his slows, even being able to chase enemies down. Also having a full lethality build that completely changes how you usually play Ashe. Let me show you why it works. But first, I'm really excited to say that this video is sponsored by Alienware. They're a huge supporter of our channel, and so I wanted to tell you about their new Aurora R13 PC that you too can get at the link in the description. The R13 specs are customizable. Here are the specs of the one that I have, it's incredible. But Alienware has it all, with the top of the line Nvidia cards all the way to the RTX 3090, as well as i9 processors. You can start with the best or easily upgrade later with no tools required. This is the official PC of the League of Legends World Championship, when the best players in the whole world meet up to compete. The R13 is the machine that they do it on. Some pro teams even practice on them, like Team Liquid who scrim on these PCs, getting rid of lag and keeping your frames locked even in teamfights. Personally, I owe a lot to having a PC like the R13. I wouldn't be able to do YouTube without having a good PC. Having a powerful computer like this has opened up doors to new opportunities that I otherwise could never have done. I learned to edit because I had a powerful PC, which made me start my YouTube channel from that skill, and now I even have a job because of it. But it can also open up new opportunities for gaming. With a powerhouse like the R13, you're going to want to play every new game you can get your hands on. Playing new games with no lag on the highest settings is incredible. It can handle everything. The R13 has a sleek design on the outside with this nice rounded case. This shape gives them more room for cable management, and it's also available in black with an optional window to see inside. This lets you see the cryotech technology from Alienware that keeps the PC cool, while also having these custom lights you can change to fit your style. So if you want to open up your future and gaming life, you can get the Aurora R13 at the link in the description. Thanks again to Alienware. Back to Ashe Top. Our player, Himself11, started playing League years ago in Season 2, but he was definitely not a high elo player. Hitting level 30 he went straight into ranked, and he clearly remembers a game where he was playing, trying his best, when he started to get flamed by his teammate for being trash and not good enough to play ranked. So what do we all do in this situation? That's right, you take the other person's advice. Of course not, we'd mute them or flame them back. But at the time, our Ashe didn't know any better. He thought, hey, my teammate is right, I must really suck. So he went straight back to normal games, playing over 800 games that season to try and improve. But by Season 3, he'd gone nowhere, legitimately being stuck in Bronze 5, gaining 3 or 4 LP per win, and losing 12 LP per loss. He was actually one of the worst players in League of Legends this year, so how could he possibly have ever reached Challenger? Well, in Season 4, he realised he was playing the wrong role for his playstyle. He was a jungle main at the time, and since it was clearly not working, he dropped it, swapping to AD carry. This year, pretty quickly he climbed up to gold in the new role. It synergised much better with his playstyle, continuing to spam AD carry. By Season 5, he'd actually already started to main Ashe, of course playing it in bot lane, and after finding his main role and champion, it was ridiculous how much he started to improve. Sticking to one pick, learning the matchups, learning how to win bot lane and how to kite. He hit Diamond 1 only 2 seasons after being the lowest rank possible. It's a crazy climb, and the only real reason he said it was possible was because he found his one champion that fit him as a person. So it really shows how important it is to test out as many picks as you can. By Season 7, after 2 years of playing Ashe AD carry, he became the #1 ranked Ashe in the world, even hitting Challenger and then top 100 on his server. This was his old account name, by the way, Mishiro Shina, the main protagonist of his favourite anime. In Season 8, since he already hit the highest rank you could get, his next goal was to invent something new, an off-meta pick that could work in high elo. He made this smurf called Himself11, and originally began playing Kalista top, a pick that eventually became known as being invented by the Shy, a pro player, even though our player was picking it in high elo years before him. So by Season 10, when the Shy actually began to play it, our player was called a copycat, and so he dropped it, annoyed and ready to play something that no one else would ever dare to copy. This was Samira top lane, a Season 11 pick that was so random and useless that no one else would touch it. The purpose of Samira top was a full lifesteal build, where he could take trades in lane and regen the health health from minions, but it was only in Season 12 that he decided he wanted to change. The top lane meta had shifted, he was facing bruisers and burst champions every game, so Samira top was unplayable, so he returned to his classic, Ashe, but now in top lane. I'd love to tell you he theory-crafted the build, or tested it in normal games, but in reality he immediately just went into ranked, going 9 wins and 1 loss in his placements with Ashe top. His years of learning paid off, and he discovered a new pick that he could dominate and climb with. But how does this pick actually work? He may be a great AD carry player, but that won't stop a Riven or a Camille with loads of dashes reaching you. How can a squishy immobile champion survive top lane? A level 1, Ashe buys a Cull, but this champion is not a pushover, walking the safest route possible to lane to avoid any level 1 cheese, and taking W to kill the 3 melee minions. If any champion walks up to trade with her at level 1, then her slowing passive kicks in, letting her run enemies down with repeated slowing auto attacks, forcing them away from her. Your passive is the biggest reason that Ashe top works. Whenever enemies want to fight you, you can simply kite them, and then there's no way for them to escape without having to flash. Taking E at level 2, Ashe can use her vision to find the enemy jungler, using it on the enemy topside jungle. If the camps are down, then it means the enemy jungle started top, and she is safe for a long time. If the camps are up, then she knows the enemy jungle is pathing towards her, so she can play safe. You can save up to 2 charges of your E, so every 45 seconds you can scout the enemy jungle to stay safe. Ashe top lane is happy to just farm, but of course the enemies are not. Just like how your teammates will see Ashe top and think you're trolling, the enemies will think the same thing, meaning the enemy top is always going to try and kill an Ashe, thinking she can't do anything about it and has no plan. But this champion is deceiving. If the enemy hasn't yet felt the pain of her slows, then they will now. If you engage onto Ashe top and don't get rid of all of her health bar, then you're going to lose the trade, with Ashe continuing to punish your overextension with her slows. Also notice how the enemy top engages to try and kill Ashe inside her wave. All of her minions attack the enemy, while Sejuani's minions keep pushing, so the wave pushes in and Ashe can set up a freeze. Ashe focuses on farming and staying alive, so getting a freeze is ideal. Now onto the crazy part. If Ashe top dies early on, instead of just walking back to lane, he uses Ghost to get back faster and save some time. This is a very common bronze strategy that any good player would tell you not to do, and yet this guy is Challenger, and he seriously believes it's correct in some situations. I asked him about it and he said the reason that he does it is to get as much XP as possible. If he dies and minions are near his tower, he doesn't want to miss a single one, so Ghost just gives him that extra bit of movement speed to get him back as fast as possible. Also, if he's able to get back fast enough, he can set up a freeze to make the lane much easier. Comparing it to TP, of course you could teleport back to the lane, but if you use Ghost, then the enemies won't have any idea that you used it, because who would be stupid enough to use Ghost to get back to lane? So they won't be able to time the cooldown, unlike they would with teleport, and this is very important in high elo. But Ghost is also good throughout the laning phase as an extra mobility option. If you had teleport, all it would help you do is get back to lane after you die, but Ghost can be used to chase enemies and get kills, or pop it with his flash to make sure he can escape from ganks. Of course you could instead take teleport, and go for the long range arrow into teleport play, baiting enemies to stand nearby the ward, and then using the CC duration of the arrow to kill them. He then wants to base early on to start his lethality build. He has 2 options for builds. Against tanks he can base early on for Berserker Greaves, which give him safety in lane, and then start his attack speed build. The benefit of this build is you can use top lane to get 3 items very quickly, much easier than in bot lane, but if the enemy has no tanks then he can instead base for Tia and the 300 gold boots, which are part of his lethality build. This build is super high damage, and we'll come back to it once he gets some more items. At level 6 he has his ultimate, so anytime your jungler comes top it's a free kill with the CC and your slows. Our player rarely gets any jungle ganks just because the pick is so weird, and they think he's trolling, but when he does it's the freest gank you've ever seen. In a 1v1, the enemy top knows they're not going to die if it's just an Ashe, since Ashe wants to play passive. But then suddenly Ashe walks up, gives vision in the bush, gets a slow with her W which sets up the ult for free. Her jungler shows up and that's another kill, so the ganks are really worth going for. But most games his main goal is being a sniper to hit arrows across the map. Since you're a top laner, this is the best way to affect games. This Ashe can hit some really great snipes by predicting the areas enemies will fight in. He's always watching to see what's happening in case he needs to throw an arrow, while also getting perfect CS of course. He is Challenger after all. Then unlike normal AD carries, in mid game he isn't grouping up. He stays in his lane, focusing on getting as much gold as possible to get his items, with Duskblade now coming in for lethality, turning his W damage into some really good poke. poke. You can see how annoying this build is to lane against. Look at this game against a dive top laner. Even though this Ashe lost lane to her and even died in a 1v1, Gwen is still being bullied off the wave and pushed into tower, so the matchup has turned around. Then Ashe can use her squishiness to overextend and bait a kill. Mid game is all about getting these picks. Ashe is both a carry champion thanks to your auto attack damage, as well as a support thanks to the ult being used to get picks. He stays in a side lane since he's such a good bully, using his E vision to stay safe, but when an objective is up he makes sure to join teamfights. In teamfights for the lethality build, Ashe fights much different to usual. As he buys more items, the cooldown of his ult decreases a ton, even getting as low as 28 seconds, so sometimes you can use it multiple times in a fight. With lethality your goal is to poke with your 300 or 400 damage W, which stops enemies from contesting an objective, having Duskblade for safety to reposition after each kill, very similar to Vayne's ult. Often the worst thing you can do is ult too early in a fight, because the enemies will have all of their abilities up and will be ready to dodge it. This Ashe prefers to pay attention to all of her teammates and what they're doing, waiting for the enemies to use a dash, and then ult on a free target which can easily be finished off. A tip he gave me is to use his W and then his ultimate to hide the animation. The arrow becomes much harder to see, so enemies have less reaction time and are more likely to get hit. For the attack speed build, if you survive as long as possible in a fight, your team will win. You become a turret of slowing auto attacks that sits in the backline. If enemies can't dive you, then they won't win. Ghost now becomes relevant again. It's good for chasing enemies to get more kills, and also makes it easier to kite. The duration of Ghost extends whenever you get a kill or assist, which is very easy to get on Ashe thanks to your ultimate and the AoE on your W. With an extra AD carry, Baron is now a much bigger threat for your team, dying very fast. And the special thing about Ashe is that if enemies try and contest it, her arrow is ready to get a pick and then just turn back onto Baron to finish it off. So this pick does work if you follow these exact steps, but that doesn't mean it's foolproof. In fact, there are some negatives that make the pick literally unpickable. He bans Irelia to remove the biggest counter since she just can't be kited, but then champions like Malphite are still up. He's now a matchup that our player just dodges as it's impossible to win. So in conclusion, before I show the build, is this pick actually good? Well no, not even our player thinks this pick is good. It is playable because our player is really good at kiting, positioning, and playing Ashe, and has found a way to play it in a new lane for fun. It's actually a pretty simple style that lets you focus on using your mechanics, not having to worry about laning phase because of your high range, and getting to 3 items much easier than in bot lane. As long as you don't play against a counter, it's actually pretty pain-free for an AD carry, and you can even carry games. Would this player be higher rank on any other champion? Yes, but it's very impressive he's made this work even in high elo. For the builds, first we have the attack speed build, which you go against tanks. Kraken Slayer as the mythic, into Phantom Dancer, and then Wit's End against AP, Guardian Angel against AD, and then finally into Infinity Edge. But the lethality build also fits Soloq very well. You can go Duskblade for the invisibility, so you can play as a poke champion, or Gale Force if you prefer to have a dash, having the option to go Serpent's Fang against shields, or anti-heal to combo with your huge AoE W, then getting a ton of ability haste from the other lethality items. His runes are always the same, taking lethal tempo to maximize your auto attack effectiveness, and secondaries to give you survivability in lane. If you want to see more of our player, you'll likely see it in any high elo NA stream. Tyler1 plays with him a lot, as do many other streamers, but unfortunately he doesn't stream himself. Thanks so much for watching, and please check out the sponsor, link below.